I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore Iowa's stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today, we're going to talk about marijuana. From the confusion between CBD and THC, which most consumers have no idea about, to an emerging push to solve drug addiction and abuse problems by legalizing marijuana, which can look a lot like eating more candy being a solution to diabetes and obesity. The issues around marijuana are more confusing than ever, and maybe that's exactly what people pushing marijuana want. The more confused we are, the less intelligent consumers we will be. So we've asked some prevention experts on substance use disorder and marijuana to join us for an intelligent look at marijuana and why buyer beware may be good advice. Joining us today are Stacy, Kristen, and Laurel. Welcome to the show, and let's find out more about all of you, starting with Laurel.
Well, thanks so much for having me today, Peter. I appreciate the invite. My name is Laurel Muting. I'm the Prevention Director at Heartland Family Service. So I oversee all of the prevention that we do. And we have locations in both Southwest Iowa and Nebraska. So my office is in Council Bluffs. I live in Nebraska and work in both states. So I've been in prevention for 18 years, and I've been doing prevention at Heartland Family Service for 15 years.
Now let's learn more about Stacy.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me. I am with the North Fayette Valley Community Coalition. I serve as director there. Our coalition serves the North Fayette Valley School District, which is the northern half of Fayette County up in beautiful northeastern Iowa. And we are currently working under a drug-free communities grant that is kind of helping us address some youth substance use issues in our school district.
And Kristen.
Thanks for having me. I'm Kristen Housengay. I'm the Executive Director of the Clinton Substance Abuse Council in Clinton, Iowa, so the other half of the state from Laurel. And we have two coalitions in our community that focus on prevention of substance abuse, the Comanche DeWitt Coalition, as well as the Gateway Impact Coalition. And we also help to oversee the Community Resources United to Stop Heroin work group here in Clinton as well. I've been doing this for about 15 years.
Now, thanks to all of you for joining us. Let's start out with a little dialogue on how it feels to be the state in the middle. Laurel, you're on that Nebraska-Iowa border, Kristen on the Illinois-Iowa border, and then actually, Stacy, you've got a little bit of Illinois and Wisconsin up in northeast Iowa. Is it confusing for the people you're dealing with in prevention when we have completely different kinds of quote-unquote marijuana programs in every state? Laurel, what are you encountering on the western side? Absolutely.
I think it's very confusing. The topic, as you mentioned, is confusing in general, and it takes a lot longer to explain especially when you're working with youth. One of the things that we do is go into schools and talk to youth about substance use and about choices and addiction and all of those things. And it's time consuming to try and get all of the details and the facts so that they understand it. Well, it's legal in Iowa or it's not legal in Iowa, but I live in Nebraska. What's it like in Nebraska? Why is it legal in Iowa? If it's not legal in Nebraska, how did they make it legal? I mean, I could be in schools for days just talking about marijuana. So it is really confusing, especially for young people.
Now, let's go over to the other side. Kristen, you have cases where communities are very, very close to dispensaries. They cross the river, they go by. You're worried about the location of CBD shops in your schools. At the core of this is this distinction between CBD and THC. Sort of like THC, sort of the bad part of the marijuana discussion, and CBD as well. We don't know what it is, but it isn't as bad in terms of addiction. What's it like to deal with kids in the schools on your end of the state?
Well, I typically think kids don't know the difference, or they don't necessarily maybe even care. It's just marijuana or edibles or whatever kind of they're referencing to, and don't necessarily know all the different pieces that go into it, what their effects are, the legality. So it is very confusing for them.
Stacy, we know we have risk factors in the schools, and we know that the rural schools are almost an island out there, that it's hard to keep messaging going and to tell one group of kids one thing, another group another, and deal with all the different questions. is there a clear line of understanding between CBD and THC, and that the risks with THC for kids can be really, really bad?
You know, we don't find that young people a lot of times use the terms THC and CBD. They just refer to everything, you know, as marijuana and the slang terms that they refer to. So it really does, you know, back to Laurel's point, take a lot of additional work on our behalf to make sure that they're understanding, you know, that there are harmful components, there are different things. And then also trying to educate them that while CBD may have some benefits in the reference of medicine, that doesn't necessarily mean that the entire product is safe for everybody at all the time. You know, again, being rural, we have a lot of small little shops, little people that are doing things, and not that big cities don't have them either, but I think it's just some additional challenges. Local businesses are always looking to make some money, and they're always looking to kind of cash in on the next best thing. And we've had that, you know, happen quite a bit locally too. So it's constantly conflicting messages, but young people struggle understanding that and even adults struggle understanding that there are different components and different things within the marijuana plant. They just think it's just all marijuana.
These are great points. We're going to take a short break. We come back, we'll continue the conversation about the controversy surrounding marijuana. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
I don't know how we would have survived without Mediacom. We have 5 kids, my wife and I, and we have Mediacom for all of our internet and all of our cable services. So I'm stuck in my house, but at the same time, I'm connected to people all over the world, and it's been fantastic.
Thanks to Mediacom, I've had reliable internet to continue to work business as usual, that I can continue to provide for myself and my family.
Right now, we all feel like the world is in a standstill. The internet has played a huge role in allowing us to stay connected to our jobs and the kids' schooling online and finding fun and creative ways to stay connected with the ones that we love. We couldn't do it without Mediacom.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking about marijuana and why it's more important than ever to understand the dangers and the risks to some types of marijuana use. You know, there are people that are saying that history is repeating itself. At one time, opioids were legal in terms of things in Coca-Cola and heroin and hashish. All kinds of things had their times in the past. Society sort of learned their lessons and backed off. 30, 40 years ago, there was a big resurgence of talk about marijuana. It was a way to sort of be a cultural revolution, and it should have been legal and it was natural. And that died off because people pretty much realized it's like saying drink more alcohol to be a better person. And now it's coming back again, but it's not coming back the way it was around in the 60s and 70s. It's coming back really strong, really focused, I think, on getting people addicted, because that seems to be a portion of that business, to make sure that the customers come back. Kristen, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, we often hear from parents that say it's not a big deal. I had experiences with marijuana years ago. It was fine. Really working with parents through our project to educate them about how marijuana looked years ago versus what it looks like now. And that's hard to even stay on top of, because the potency of marijuana is increasing so fast to keep on top of that, and the testing that goes along with it. But oftentimes we hear it's 22 times stronger. than it used to be, right? That's how much stronger the marijuana is now, and getting parents to understand that. And when it is stronger, what makes it different then? You know, what kind of side effects, how are your reactions going to be to using something that is much more potent, and how addictive it can be as well. So absolutely. These are definitely things we want to talk to parents about. We do this through our Hidden in Plain Sight trailer experience with parents, just getting them to kind of understand not only what it looks like, but also how it's being used differently, because we maybe think of just smoking a joint or something that's or a bowl, but there's so many different ways that marijuana can even be consumed that I think parents don't even necessarily know or understand or think of.
Stacy, do you think that we have a climate where this confusion is sort of created by the industry trying to push marijuana, and our kids sort of wising up to that somehow they're just a predator out there trying to get them to do something and keeping them confused about marijuana?
In my experience of working with young people, I don't know that I think that they're catching on to it quite yet. I think they are starting to ask some questions about, well, I saw it on the news and they talked about it being medicinal, and you know, I saw that it can be used for seizures, and my best friend talked to a counselor who said that it can be used for anxiety. And so there's all these messages out there, and they're really trying to navigate them. I think, you know, one of the challenges, and we know this from all of the areas of our work, is everything is on the internet, and any message that you want to be out there is out there. And so it just takes a really quick Google search and they can find exactly what they want something to say. And so it is, you know, I don't know that they're critically thinking about it yet. I think we have some really good critical thinking discussions about the media and how that plays out. We're utilizing the Catch My Breath curriculum for vaping in the schools right now, which focuses primarily on nicotine, but we do also discuss the media and how the media companies, the tobacco companies who are now owning a lot of these marijuana companies, are really kind of trying to create that next set of users. And so we're starting some of that critical thinking thing, but I'm not sure that we're there yet. It's definitely a work in progress for us.
Laurel, I know you have a lot of experience legislatively as well, especially working across 2 states. We have a new dialogue starting now that somehow drug laws and marijuana being illegal are discriminatory. And there's a push now with Black Lives Matter to say we need to legalize marijuana so that there's a level playing field for Black people. But years ago in New York, Black scholars said, we don't want to see reduced punishment for people trafficking or using cocaine, because the first thing they saw when there was less enforcement was that it was their very own minority children that were using the most. So we're in a difficult spot. Do we think legalization has any benefit, or is this really just an idea that's past its prime and it just keeps coming back all the time?
Well, I think, yeah, it is. We're just in a cycle here. We just history repeats itself, right? And the one thing that we learn about history is that we don't learn from history. And so, yes, this isn't a new argument. And we know that what has happened in other states with commercialization and legalization of marijuana has not helped communities of color in any way, shape, or form. Because that is precisely where the industry plops down their dispensaries, and their marketing and their advertising is in communities of color or in lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, just the same as the alcohol industry, just the same as the tobacco industry. So the marijuana industry is no different in any of this. They are in it for the money, and they are also in it for addiction. They know that they are not going to make their money on someone who goes to Colorado and buys a weed brownie just to see what it's about. They make their money on the people who develop an addiction to their product, which is why the potency is increasing so dramatically, because they need people to become addicted to their product so that they can make money. And
yeah, I think you represent a great view, because all of us, and I know you all personally, we all have a deep care for this issue of substance use disorder. And we've all seen firsthand that it does not discriminate. It doesn't care what color you are. It doesn't care what your socioeconomic status is. But we do know that poverty is at the core of this. And that also doesn't discriminate. That in all of our areas of work around the state and surrounding states, we see the poorest people most affected. And some people would argue that the poorest people need the most help to keep that access, to keep the predatory companies trying to push these things like dealers out of their communities. Looking at the state, Kristen, do you think that that's an issue, that we need to put up these barriers to protect people from things like marijuana legalization?
Well, and one of the things that we're focusing on is just trying to reduce childhood trauma, reduce those adverse childhood experiences. Anything we can do to reduce that, I think, reduces the likelihood, right, of kids using substances or engaging in risky behavior, period. So really just trying to reduce what that looks like in a community and family and provide supports where it's needed the most.
That's a great
And if
point.
I could,
Go ahead, Stacey.
sorry, Peter, if I could jump in, I think too, agreeing with both Kristen and Laurel, I think the decriminalization of marijuana it seems like a low-hanging fruit. I think it's still missing the very valuable point of trauma and poverty and situations. And, it seems while absolutely more people of color are put into jail because of marijuana use than those not. It's too low hanging. We're still not getting at the root really of what's going on. And so I think we need to really broaden the discussion. While the facts are more people of color are being incarcerated, we still are not doing enough to build skills among young people, among parents, among our communities to really start to address this and empower them to address it. Don't go for the easy thing. We really just need to address it all.
Well, and I think
When we get back to the break, we'll come back and take a look at this and take a closer look at how current events have influenced people's views of marijuana use and substance abuse. Thank you. We'll see you at the break. You don't want to miss this.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening. Our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and Mediacom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible. While a lot is changing in our world, at Mediacom, our focus remains the same, making sure you have the fastest, most reliable connection possible. During this critical time, we know your needs are changing. You may be working or learning from home, relying on telemedicine, or finding new ways to keep everyone entertained. If you need more speed, call or go online, and Mediacom will double your speed immediately for as low as $10 more a month for 1 year.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. Marijuana's been around a long time, and history is bound to repeat itself as the current excitement about marijuana eventually goes away and people realize it's not what they think. But right now, that's not the situation. Laurel, you had some great points about what's happening with marijuana.
When you look at what's happening in other states that have legalized and commercialized marijuana, which is, what people are saying they want all across the country, when you look at those states, the arrest rates for African Americans and Hispanics are not going down because those states have legalized or commercialized marijuana. They're actually going up. And so it's really important to look at the facts and the science and the research of what's really actually happening in other states. And I think one of the things that the industry does really well is they take 5 or 6 different totally separate points and they smush them together into one sentence that seems to make sense. But you have to talk about those things really separately, because decriminalization is another topic that people will say that they really want to see happen, but that's very different than commercialization and legalization. And so in Nebraska, we already have marijuana decriminalized. If you have less than an ounce of marijuana on your person, it's an infraction. It's like a traffic citation. It's a $300 fine, possibly the officer will just take the marijuana and confiscate it and send it on your way. So decriminalization is already happening all across the country. People just don't understand that, because they say that, you know, all these people are in prison for their simple marijuana possession. And that's just simply not the case. Whether marijuana is decriminalized in your community or not, officers are not throwing people in jail for walking around with a joint in their pocket. That's not happening. And so it's really important to look at the facts and the research and understand that these issues are totally separate issues in and of themselves.
Well, and we know that substance use disorder, especially among the youth, it impairs your ability to make good judgments. And so it's, you know, it creates problems for people to cope with reality. And sometimes it creates aberrant behavior that encounter law enforcement. And with all the grief law enforcement gets today, the fact is that if they're the intervention for substance use disorder, we've let the problem get way out of hand. And we're really short. I mean, we've constantly focused on prevention should be really more active, so that the problems of people dealing with substance use disorders don't become a policing problem, but they're embraced as a community, a school, and a family problem where we can have some solutions. What do you think, Kristen?
Well, I think that we want to be clear as a community what we hope and aspire for our youth, that we want them to make good choices. We want them to be resilient. And as a community, we don't want to promote those things that are harmful to kids. So the more times they see advertisement or promotion for marijuana or even alcohol and tobacco, that does send the message of what the community is all about. And if we're growing healthy, happy kids, if that's what we're working on trying to do as a community, we want to reduce as many of those influences as possible.
And Stacy?
I would agree. You know, our role as the North Fayette Valley Community Coalition is really just to build those resiliency skills, educate young people on really what's out there, and to build those critical thinking skills, you know, to take in all that information and the messages and the social media ads that are being thrown at them, and encourage them to think through that critically and use what you know about history and the things that we've seen before to really make informed decisions, and also to use their voices to encourage others to be healthy, to have the conversations with local elected officials and statewide elected officials to say, no, this is what is needed to make sure that myself, my siblings, my peers, all of those people that are important to me, what we need to do to keep everybody healthy.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a short break, and afterwards, I'm going to ask you all to share some comments and advice for our listeners. See you after the break. You don't want to miss this.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Right now, millions of people and billions of devices are connected to the internet. Homes, businesses, hospitals, schools. The security and reliability of these connections are more important than ever. That's why at Mediacom, we've built a network to protect them. A network that sees threats, fixes problems before they occur, and keeps you going with 99.99% network reliability.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski. We're talking about marijuana, and we're to one of our favorite parts of the show where we ask our guests to share some advice. for people you care, your family members. This is so important. Stacy, starting with you, what would you share with our listeners?
I think the most important thing, or the thing that I encourage parents to do the most, is really to get on our listserv, check out our website, follow social media, use respectable, responsible sources for information. There's so much stuff out there, and really anybody can post anything they want. But knowing who the sources of information are, using your local people. We're all super busy, but we try our best as coalitions to provide information through videos, through presentations, through newsletters, through lots of things. So make those connections, get out there and find who your local people are, and kind of take in what they have and ask questions to them as much as you can.
And Kristen?
Yeah, I would say prevention is key. For parents, start early and talk often to your kids about these things. And one topic we didn't cover today was brain development. The research that's coming out on that's really irrefutable. I mean, it's facts, it's science, and it's so interesting. I think kids respond and parents respond to understanding how brain development works, and prevention makes sense.
And Laurel?
Yeah, I would echo what both Kristen and Stacy said, and I think it's really important to get involved. It doesn't have to mean you're spending hours of your day going to meetings, but get involved in some way. Volunteer at an event, get youth involved, because they're passionate about this. When they understand what's happening and how they're being targeted by the industry, they're passionate about wanting to share that information. So get youth involved, talk to your local elected officials. You might not think you can make a difference, but you can. When you develop those personal one-on-one relationships with legislators, they want to hear from you. They really do.
And one thing we do know from work and what we've heard from all of you, and I really thank you for your messages, is that most kids are not going to use marijuana. Most kids are going to avoid these high-risk factors. And in many cases, we need the parents to help those good kids be better informed and more knowledgeable so they can protect their peers and help our community stay strong. Thank you for everything you've shared with us today. And thank you for joining us today on Surviving Bad. You can go to our website, ahealthyiowa.org, for more information. Keep your eye on Mediacom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore Iowa stories of survival, hope, and inspiration on Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader.